Agnes opened a door hoping for mini golf and a buffet. Instead, she walked straight into a leadership retreat run by angels planning the apocalypse. And the worst part? They were very polite about it. This is chapter 15 of The Trouble with Angels. I was promised mini golf, not a rogue angel cabal, and yet here we are. If you want to binge Bob and Hannah's adventure from the beginning, start at chapter 1. You'll find that link and the full season 1 hub in the show notes. And if you know someone who loves cosmic bureaucracy, suspiciously cheerful retreats, angels behaving like middle management, buffets that hide existential conspiracies, share this episode with them. Previously on The Trouble with Angels. Hannah marched into heaven looking for answers and discovered the management of existence appearing to be permanently out of the office. Bob revealed he'd been quietly keeping the entire system from collapsing using celestial duct tape, prayer, and stubborn decency. And somewhere in heaven's paperwork pipeline, an apocalypse order slipped through the system. Which brings us to Agnes and a very unfortunate leadership retreat. Chapter 15. I was promised mini golf, not a rogue angel cabal, and yet here we are, by Glory Fink. Agnes did not go looking for trouble. Agnes was looking for mini golf and a buffet that didn't make a person feel like a burden for having a body. That's the difference between her and me. I will kick a door down to demand answers. Agnes will open a door politely because she wants somewhere fun with really good food. And before you decide she was naive, let me be very clear. Predators don't start with teeth. They start with sweet words and a lanyard. That's how you know you're in danger. Nobody dangerous ever opens with a growl. They open with a welcome packet. Agnes told me this story later, when we were already deep enough into heaven's nonsense that the word committee made my eyes twitch like I'd been tased by a stapler. She sat with her hands folded in her lap like she was about to confess to forgetting someone's birthday, not like she'd accidentally wandered into the planning session for the end of the world. She kept saying, small and bewildered, it was just nice at first. And I said, baby, that wasn't nice. That was customer service at knife point. Because here's the part Agnes didn't know when it happened. Agnes smells like tea roses. And in heaven, tea roses means one thing, executive proximity, which is a bureaucratic way of saying you have been close enough to God that his scent got onto you like pollen. Anyway, Agnes said it started like a wish, not a prayer, a wish. I want somewhere fun with really good food. She expected Pigeon Forge vibes. In Agnes's defense, Pigeon Forge has better theology than most angelic meetings. Friendly, welcoming, family fun energy, a place where strangers call you hun, like it's a blessing, and the air smells like cinnamon and fried dough, and nobody looks at your body like it's an inconvenience. She opened the door and stepped through. Agnes makes a wish. If you're wondering why this matters, Agnes is not entirely human. We would later discover she was made for a purpose so specific it could be bullet-pointed. But, of course, she put her own special Agnes twist on it, because Destiny has never met a small-town woman who doesn't own a casserole dish and a right to improvise. Agnes told me she didn't even feel the shift until her shoes hit the carpet. Not home carpet, not hotel carpet, corporate carpet. That brown and tan pattern weave designed to hide the existence of human feet, human mess, and if possible, human souls. Overhead, lights hummed softly, the way office lights hum when they're trying to convince you that you're safe. Agnes blinked. She was in a hotel conference hallway, and it felt almost like Pigeon Forge. Not because it looked like it, because it had the same curated friendliness, that bright welcome energy, the kind of place that tries to make you forget you have a nervous system. There were cheerful signs with arrows. There was a printed welcome poster on an easel done in a friendly font that tried desperately to pretend it had a pulse. Welcome, valued attendees. Leadership retreat, alignment, and advancement. Bringing our vision into the next quarter. Whenever someone says alignment, start checking for exits. Agnes said she stood there for a second thinking, oh, this is a retreat. And because she is Agnes, her first thought wasn't, why is this happening? Her first thought was, maybe there's a buffet. Arrival, the sus name tag welcome. When Agnes told me how welcoming they were, I had to sit down. Not because she was wrong, because she was right. The warmth was real, the smiles were real, the hospitality was real. So was the trap, babes. A staffer rounded the corner wearing a crisp polo shirt and khakis with purpose. Their smile was bright enough to sell you a timeshare and then thank you for the opportunity to invest. Hi there, they said. Welcome, you must be one of our late arrivals. No worries at all. We're just thrilled you could make it. Agnes opened her mouth to say, and the staffer stepped closer and pressed a lanyard into her hands like it was the most normal thing in the world to hand a stranger a badge for a meeting they did not sign up for. The badge was laminated, gleaming, official. Hello! Clearance executive proximity. Track special initiative. If a stranger hands you a badge claiming you have clearance, congratulations. You are either in a cult or at a leadership retreat, which is often the same thing. Agnes stared at it. Oh, is this mine? She asked, because politeness is her default setting even when reality is glitching. Oh, absolutely, the staffer said. We've been expecting you. That sentence should be federally illegal and punishable by exile. They handed her an attendee packet, stapled, neat, heavy with the kind of paper that thinks it's more important than your body. And here's your schedule, buffet times, breakout sessions, and a quick overview of our values alignment. Agnes glanced at the schedule. There were time blocks like 8 a.m., continental breakfast, and strategic mingling. 9 a.m., wins this quarter, roundtable. 10:30 a.m., controlled escalation planning, closed session. 12 p.m., buffet lunch, nourish to flourish. 2 p.m., risk mitigation and containment strategies. Agnes told me she got a small shiver right there, not fear yet. More like her body saying, girl, this is not mini-golf. But the staffer's smile didn't change. Can I get you anything? They asked warmly. Coffee, a snack, an executive pen and pencil set? Agnes blinked and then said, maybe just a snack? Because she had asked for really good food. Because she had asked for really good food, and she did not like to waste her own wishes. The staffer clapped once, delighted. Perfect, the buffet is ready. And then, this is the part that makes my skin crawl. Before Agnes even took a step, people down the hall started turning their heads. Not curious, not casual, alert, like dogs catching a scent. Someone sniffed the air and murmured delighted, do you smell that? A second voice reverent, tea roses. Agnes thought it meant perfume. No, honey, they meant clearance, and that's worse. They meant approved. They meant the executive is near. The buffet is nasty. Evil loves a buffet. Evil loves good rolls. Evil loves any environment where you hesitate to leave because you've finally eaten something warm. Agnes said the buffet was incredible. Fried chicken that tasted like it had been blessed by a southern grandmother and then given a corporate title. Macaroni so creamy it felt like forgiveness. Rolls that smelled like butter and personal safety. Evil understands casseroles better than most theologians. She took one bite and her shoulders dropped. And I understand that so deeply I could weep, because food is one of the ways the universe says, you get to keep going. And while Agnes ate, the Cabal did what monsters do best. They acted like neighbors. They smiled. They chatted. They offered plates and napkins. And, honey, do you want some more? Underneath that, their retreat talk had little glitches. Odd word choices. Phrases that felt not human. Too much excitement about process and routing. Someone said, cheerful as sunshine, we're really excited about the new routing efficiencies. Another replied, we love a good process improvement, especially when it's, adjacent. They laughed like it was funny. Agnes paused mid-bite. She looked around like she expected someone to wink and say, just kidding. No one did. She thought she was blending in. They thought she was already one of them. That misunderstanding is the engine of this entire disaster. Every apocalypse begins with a misunderstanding and a room full of people who think they're the smartest ones there. Meeting begins, committee energy. HOA, but make it apocalyptic. Agnes described the conference room like an HOA meeting that had seen the face of God and decided he needed accountability. If angels ever invent a homeowners association, we're all doomed. Folding tables arranged in a square, a flip chart with bright markers, printed agenda packets placed at each seat like little landmines, someone taking minutes like the minutes mattered more than the souls. The chairperson stood at the head of the tables, calm, smiling, friendly in a way that made your spine whisper, "Run." Her name badge read, Geburiatil, chairperson. Geburiatil's energy was, "Welcome, everyone," but her eyes were, "I can ruin you in a spreadsheet." "Good morning," Geburiatil said. "We're so grateful you've chosen to be here in the alignment with our shared goals." A murmur of pleased agreement. Geburiatil lifted a hand. "Let's begin with our wins this quarter." Agnes sat down slowly in the nearest open seat, holding her plate like a life raft. And I need you to understand, Agnes did not sit down because she wanted to join. She sat down because polite people are trained to follow the flow, even when the flow is leading off a cliff. Wins this quarter, Agnes accidentally passes. One by one, attendees shared wins in corporate language. "We successfully streamlined interdepartmental approvals using the legacy stamp protocol." "Morale has improved since implementing the veiled threats as motivation initiative." "We're seeing excellent compliance outcomes after tightening containment language." Agnes told me she nodded like she understood. She did not. But she could feel the room watching her, measuring her, waiting for her to prove she belonged. And then Geburiatil's eyes flicked to Agnes, warm, expectant. "And you?" Geburiatil said gently. "Would you like to share a win?" Agnes froze. Every face turned toward her. Every smile stayed in place. And Agnes did what she always does when she doesn't know the rules. She told the truth. "Well," Agnes said carefully, "I had tea with my Uncle Yancey, and we ate lemon cakes, and I got to feel a little bit like myself again." Agnes was talking about lemon cakes. They heard executive clearance. This is what happens when bureaucracy replaces listening. Silence, then a delighted ripple. Geburiatil smiled wider. "Beautiful," Geburiatil said. "That's exactly the kind of executive grounding we need." Tea roses drifted in the air like a quiet blessing. Someone whispered awe. "She's been with him." Agnes told me she went cold all over because she realized they weren't talking about tea. They were talking about authority. Tea roses equals approved, not morally, administratively. Agnes was not strategic. Agnes is polite. The Cabal does not understand the difference. Any new business? The big lie. This is the moment the story stops being funny. Geburiatil glanced at her agenda packet. "Any new business?" she asked brightly. A person down the table lifted their hand. Their badge read, Remiel Operations. Remiel's smile was proud, like a golden retriever presenting a stick and expecting applause. "Any new business?" Remiel repeated, delighted. "Yes, we were able to reroute an apocalypse order through heaven to Gabriel, and they believed it was legit, and they summoned Michael. We're doing great." Imagine announcing the end of the world like you're reporting quarterly sales numbers. Agnes told me her fork stopped midair. Like her body didn't know what to do with the sentence apocalypse order, spoken like it was a catering update. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She did the most Agnes thing possible. She nodded politely and said softly, in a voice you use when someone shows you a baby picture, "Oh, well, congratulations." because her brain was still trying to file what she heard under normal conversation. It wasn't. It was a confession. With snacks. And in that moment, this chapter pivots from weird retreat to, oh no, the Cabal's ideology, forcing management to return. Gabrielle leaned forward, soothing as a therapist and twice as dangerous. Let's contextualize, she said. For any new members, what we're doing is not against the divide. Several attendees nodded, relieved. Gabrielle's smile didn't change. Our executive leadership has been disengaged, a sympathetic murmur. The human project is trending toward closure. Gabrielle continued as if she were discussing quarterly sales. That's not a judgment, just a metric. Someone chimed in, cheerful. We're getting ahead of the inevitable. Another added, we're being efficient. Gabrielle spread her hands, palms up. We're simply engaging in proactive risk mitigation, she said gently. In orderly transition, a controlled escalation event. They said apocalypse without calling it apocalypse. They dressed it up in HR language. Orderly transition, controlled escalation, risk mitigation, managed closure. Then, Gabrielle said the real part out loud, still in that soft voice. We're escalating matters, so top management returns to HQ. You know what the Cabal believes? That God is a manager. That humans are a project. And that apocalypse is a lever you pull to force executive presence back into the building. They explain this the way someone explains a benefits package. And the irony, was that God wasn't absent the way they claimed. God was doing something they couldn't imagine. Something emotionally mature. Something that didn't revolve around these mid-level angels' need to be supervised, which made them panic. Hannah Mirror. Human containment talk. Then the meeting shifted, and Agnes said she felt the air change. Gabrielle flipped a page in her packet. Next, she said warmly, we need to address the human variable. A few attendees straightened, attentive. A human, Hannah, has demonstrated increased emotional volatility, as well as the willingness to subvert authority and protocol. Agnes's stomach turned. I know, because she told me. Her voice got quiet, like she was trying not to be unkind about the unkindest thing she'd ever heard. She's non-compliant, someone whispered, thrilled. Gabrielle nodded slowly. She is increasingly resistant to stabilization. Her grief is operationally disruptive. If you want to know what it feels like to be described as a risk mitigation problem, imagine your grief being stapled into a packet and handed around the room. Current recommendation is containment, Gabrielle continued. Agnes's fork slipped from her fingers and clinked against her plate. Gabrielle held up a hand, reassuring. Not punitive, she clarified. Supportive containment, a quiet environment, reduces access to key personnel. Someone said cheerfully, if we separate her from Bob, we reduce the contagion risk. Agnes told me she wanted to throw up, but she also wanted to stay, because she realized this wasn't just creepy. This was a plan. And plans can be stopped if you can prove they exist. The assignment. Since you have clearance. This is where the Cabal made their move. Because if you can't recruit someone with ideology, you recruit them with assumptions, I guess. A staffer approached Agnes privately with warmth and deference, like they were letting her in on something special. You have clearance, they murmured reverently. We can sense it on you. Agnes smelled like tea roses, so they treated her like she belonged at the top of the chain. They handed her a branded tote bag, navy embroidered with the retreat logo, alignment and advancement. Inside the tote was a thick folder, official looking, heavy. Since you have clearance, the staffer said softly, I trust you'll be able to deliver this. Agnes blinked. Deliver it where? She asked. The staffer smiled. Up the chain, they said, to the right hands, the hands that matter. Agnes accepted it automatically because she was raised to be helpful, because she didn't want to be rude. Predators love polite people. Polite people carry things without asking questions. Politeness is not consent. I suppose the Cabal was counting on the fact that most good people don't learn that until it's too late. They didn't need Agnes to agree with them. They just needed her to carry something for 5 minutes. Contents of the folder, the smoking gun. Agnes didn't read it all right then. She told me she couldn't. Like her body refused to take in more information while she was still standing in a hallway that smelled like cinnamon and violence in equal measure. But she saw enough. The top page had a header. Controlled escalation event. Phase plan. Objective. Trigger executive presence. Method. Forged routing authority / legitimacy aesthetics. Below that, a section titled Human Risk Assessment. Hannah. Non-compliance vector. She saw a routing trail designed to look legitimate, minutes that documented the reroute and success summoning Michael, language that made the apocalypse feel like a deliverable. Forged legitimacy looks clean. That's the point. They wanted it to pass through heaven like a fake signature on a form no one dares question. Agnes told me she closed the folder like it could bite. Then she kept walking. Exit. Pigeon Forge kindness versus apocalypse tote. The detail I can't stop thinking about is that the hotel stayed cheerful. Families kept laughing. Kids kept running. The carpet stayed clean. The buffet stayed warm. Agnes walked out into the main hotel corridor, and it was so normal it almost made her cry. A couple carried a bag of fudge. A teenager held a tacky souvenir sword. Someone behind the front desk said, "Y'all have fun!" Agnes adjusted the tote strap on her shoulder. It was heavier than it looked. She stepped out into the bright tourist town daylight that felt like Pigeon Forge had been copy-pasted onto reality with a cheerful font. A stranger smiled at her. Agnes smiled back, because she is Agnes. And she walked through a sunny, friendly world carrying snacks, a lanyard, and the end of the world in a tote bag. Nobody stopped her, because nobody knew what she was carrying, except the people who meant for it to be delivered. And the worst part? They were right. It was delivered. Just not the way they planned. Next time, on The Trouble with Angels, the paperwork behind the apocalypse starts looking suspiciously forged. Bob and Hannah realize Heaven's routing system may have been tampered with, which means there's only one sensible place to investigate a cosmic conspiracy. Underground, with a rat merchant. You've been listening to The Trouble with Angels by Glory Fink. If this chapter hit a little close to home, if you've ever felt like the system was trying to manage your grief instead of listening to it, please remember you deserve support, not containment. If you're in the US or Canada, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. In the United Kingdom and Republic of Ireland, Samaritans are available at 116-123. In Australia, Lifeline is 131114. And if you're in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number. If you want to help this story keep finding its people, you can tap the heart button, engagement is magic, leave a comment, Pierre will absolutely read it with his tiny red hands like sacred literature. You could even toss a coin in the coffee fund. Divine contributions are always welcome on Ko-fi, Venmo, and Cash App, links in the show notes. The Trouble with Angels lives at Glorious Magazine on Substack. Behind the Scenes Chaos lives at the Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe on Substack. And you can find me, Glory Fink, as @Glory Writes the Blues on Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. And remember, if a meeting starts with a welcome packet and a buffet, read the agenda very carefully. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in Chapter 16. Goodbye!